Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Johnny Mac, full draft recap getting underway. Everyone's been waiting to hear your thoughts on the full draft. Eagles did pretty good. Eagles land a couple stars. Eagles get A.J. Brown. Eagles get Jordan Davis in the first round. I'll get it to you and, for your open on what you think of what the Eagles were able to do this weekend before we dive into each player individually. What's your opening thoughts on the draft as a whole, not one particular day or pick?
Yeah, I don't think there's much complaining you can do. I know some people are upset at the volume. We're back at sort of I like to call Carson Wentz, post Carson Wentz draft levels, only 5 picks. But when you put the whole context in and, moving up to get Jordan Davis, trading to get A.J. Brown, you also have that extra first round pick in 2023 now from trading pre-draft with the New Orleans Saints. So when you add all that context into it, look, it's nobody got better value in the first round of the draft than the Philadelphia Eagles. Even the teams with all kinds of draft capital at their beat, the New York Giants with the 2 top 10 picks, the New York Jets who ended up getting 3 first round picks. Hey, these are all projections. I mean, even, and Jordan Davis is in that category as well. Eagles got a proven commodity in A.J. Brown, a guy who's a 2-time 1,000-yard receiver already in his NFL career. And remember, he did that much like it was here in Philadelphia last year with a run-first offense with Derrick Henry, maybe the most run-heavy offense in the NFL, and he was still able to produce at those levels. He's a really good player, and he's a proven player. And, not when you can say what you want, whether from Trayvon Walker at number 1 overall down to Lewis Seen at number 32. They're all projections at this point. As Nick Sirianni said Thursday night, there is no projection with A.J. Brown. You know what you have.
Yeah, and the other point there is I would call his quarterback in Tennessee mediocre at best and Ryan Tannehill. So, I mean, if you're putting up over 1,000 yards receiving and you don't have a volume passer, I think that says a lot about what you're able to do in the open field, getting open, becoming available, making catches that maybe the ball is not perfectly thrown. That might be a good thing for our young quarterback to have a receiver who's not only a great player, but you hear about his forgiveness or the his catch radius and him going to get the ball on maybe some throws that aren't right on the money. So that should be good to have for our young quarterback as well.
Yeah, I mean, no question. In a lot of ways, I mean, there are no more excuses for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
we've talked about it before in that, have the Eagles built around Jalen Hurts? Have they given him enough weapons? Well, now there's no argument with weapons. You have A.J. Brown added to Devontae Smith. I mean, if you want to be fair about it, I think long term, I think Devontae Smith has an opportunity to be even better than A.J. Brown. But right now, you'd have to say A.J.'s, so-called wide receiver 1. Devontae's now a wide receiver 2. That's really good. And you have no qualms at Quez Watkins as that third option, as a still growing, developing player. You also have a top 5 tight end in Dallas Goedert to throw to, who, by the end of last season, he was the receiver that Jalen Hurts was most comfortable with and was sort of his security blanket. And we also have Miles Sanders coming back in a contract year, and you've already seen him working out in Houston. Lot of kick in the butt, so to speak, for Miles Sanders. He understands this is it. I mean, if it's not going to be in Philadelphia's second contract, it's going to be somewhere else, and he's got to have a big season to prove he deserves a a big contract at a position the NFL doesn't like to give that out to. Those big money contracts
too.
Yeah. So either way, he's got a lot to play for in 2022. So on paper, we know the offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. On paper, hey, the Eagles have everything you need on offense. So now it's on the quarterback's shoulders, as it always is. But there were excuses before AJ Brown got here. Now there's not nearly as many.
Let's get into the first overall pick for the Eagles, which was Jordan Davis. Everyone has given their initial reaction. Oh, yeah, great. National champion, was part of the big Georgia defense. Let's dive a little bit deeper. What do you see his role being in year one specifically? Is he going to be more reserved with Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave? Do you see them plugging him right in to play that nose like you talked about? Explain a little bit how you see Jonathan Gannon using such a big, athletic, versatile player like Jordan Davis in this defense.
Well, he is going to be a rotational player to start. And remember, he's not used to playing a lot to begin with because Georgia had so much talent. They just rotated players in and out because they needed to keep them. I mean, Trayvon Walker was the number 1 overall pick. Devontae Wyatt ended up going in the first round as well. Obviously, Jordan goes in the first round. They have another kid, Jalen Carter's going to be a top 10 pick most likely next year. This is on the same defensive line. Jermaine Johnson, who was a first-round pick to the New York Jets, was a Georgia transfer. So this is one of the things brought up by a GM prior to the draft. Georgia was so talented on the defensive line, they had to worry about the transfer portal. They learned about that from Jermaine Johnson. And look, if guys aren't going to get the play, they're just going to go transfer out and play somewhere else. So they didn't want to lose any of these kids, so they had this rotational system. If you go back to when Fletcher Cox was a rookie, I think he played 49% of the snaps. So I think there's this assumption that, well, he's got to play 80% of the snaps. That's not going to happen, especially right away. But Fletcher is now under a 1-year deal, so he's under contract through next season. Javon Hargrave is only under contract through next season. So this is about more than 2022. It's about 2022, but also the years moving forward. So we'll see what kind of decisions they make with Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave. But ultimately, this guy's going to be a big part of the Eagles defense. It is a player that Jonathan Gannon has wanted, the type of player, because Fletcher's not a nose tackle. Javon's not a nose tackle. Milton Williams isn't a nose tackle. So he likes to use those odd man fronts at times. He had to use 5-man fronts at times. People get too caught up in 4-3 versus 3-4. The new way to do it in the NFL is multiple fronts, and this is a player that allows him to use all kinds of different fronts. And you can see the way the Eagles are building with not only this type of player, and as we did earlier, we did our undrafted player special, and I brought up Noah Elise, who's another 350-pound defensive tackle, because they want this type of player. So now they have the starter, Jordan Davis. They have a potential backup, and that allows them to play guys at 5 technique, 9 technique, 4-eye, whatever they want to play, because of Jordan Davis. He's the domino, because you can stick him on the nose, and the opposition is going to need 2 blockers to deal with him. And that opens up everything for everybody else, not only the rest of the defensive linemen, but the linebackers. It also, Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod last season were asked to do too much, to be honest, in the running game because the Eagles were not good with run fits. They weren't good with run fits because they didn't have a big nose tackle to take up those 2 blockers. There's so many dominoes to this particular player, and that's why the Eagles wanted him so badly. And that's why I predicted before the draft that they would trade up to 13 ahead of Baltimore to get him. And that's exactly what happened. And people should look at it this way. His floor as a prospect, his floor, in other words, the worst, is going to be one of the best run defenders in this league. A 2-down player. And maybe you don't see the value in that at the 13th overall pick, but that's the floor. He's also got this freakish athleticism for a 345-pound guy. And he wasn't asked to do it at Georgia, much like Trayvon Walker, who's in Jacksonville right now as the number 1 overall pick, wasn't really asked to go after the passer as an edge rusher at Georgia because they didn't need him to do that.
Yeah, and part of it's because of the other guy that the Eagles just drafted was sitting there behind him to run everyone down. You know,
and Nakobe Dean, and we got a chance to talk to him, and we'll talk about him in a moment. He mentioned, how important Jordan Davis was to his success.
Oh, I'm sure
as the Butkus Award winner and the best linebacker in the country. So this has the potential to be a difference-making player for the Philadelphia Eagles. And at the worst case, as I said, would you like to have Vita Vea as a 2-down player? Because that's the potential with Jordan Davis.
I think Jordan can be better than I love Vita Vea, and I think Jordan can be as good, if not better. And I know that's a lofty comparison because that's a really good defensive tackle in this league. But when you look at Jordan Davis, I mean, I see a special athlete, a special player in him. And the reality is, John, 2 of the greatest players on this football team are Fletcher Cox and are Jason Kelce. And eventually you're going to have to worry about life after those 2 players. And I think the Eagles did
probably next year, to be honest.
And I think the Eagles did a huge thing this draft in checking those boxes. And then real quick, I want to get into Jordan Davis and the weight. Everyone's talking about the weight. Ray Didinger was on with the Sports Take guys right before the draft. He said when he talked to him at the Maxwell, he was playing around 350 last year. When he ran at the Combine, he was around 330. Many people suggest he should be playing a little bit lower than 330. Do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think he should be playing at? Do you think the Eagles will put him on some sort of regimen? Weight. I think he's okay. I mean, I look at the athleticism. I think he's a freak. I think he'll be okay. But the reality is you will have to manage that. What can you add to that?
Well, I think, the one question with Jordan as a prospect was conditioning, because he wasn't asked to play a lot at Georgia, and he knew that. And he knew he wasn't going to be out there for 60, 70 snaps. So, you can afford to get up to 350 or whatever and still dominate. The one game that Georgia had trouble in was the SEC championship game. And he was forced to play a little bit more than he was used to because they needed him out there. And obviously that game didn't end up well for Georgia. They were able to get the revenge in the national championship game. But so that's a legitimate critique that he needs better conditioning. But that's what, he wanted to show people. And that's why he got down to where he got down for all the workouts, the combines, the pro days. And he showed off, the 4.7, 840. And, it's tough to say with a 345-pound guy, he's about 340 now, I think he said. He doesn't look,
No, I saw the picture
slim.
I saw the picture you posted up to Twitter of him walking through the hallway. I'm like,
yeah,
whew, that's a big boy, but he looks good. He looks like he's ready to play ball.
Yeah. So to me, the bigger thing is conditioning, because ultimately you do want him to be a 3-down player because he has the athleticism to do that.
Right.
And then you're talking about, you want him out there 55 to 65 snaps every single game. And to do that, he is going to have to improve his conditioning. But I don't think you need that right away. And because the Eagles are deep at defensive tackle. They still have Fletcher right now. They still have Javon Hargrave. They still have Milton Williams. But those guys are not – there's a lot of redundancy with those players in that they're all best suited to play 3 technique,
right.
Fletcher's probably the most versatile. He can play 5. He can play 4-eye, but he doesn't like to. And Javon and Milton's also versatile. He can play outside.
He's just a little undersized, right?
Yeah, he's very undersized. But Javon's probably best suited as a pure 3 technique. And this just enables Jonathan Gannon and Tracy Rocker to put players where they should be and not play them out of position.
Let's move on, Johnny Mac. Let's get over to the second round draft pick, Cam Jurgens. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, there was a lot of it.
Jurgens?
It is Jurgens. There was a lot. I guess Cam was joking around with some people, and he said,
"Okay," because Barrett came on. He's like, "Yeah, it's Jurgens." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, all right."
Well, it was funny because the Eagles put out a phonetic spelling, and at first it was Jurgens, and I'd been calling him Cam Jurgens forever, and I'm like, "Oh, am I butchering this poor kid's name?"
Yeah.
And no, he was joking around evidently with some people. His nickname is Beef Jergy, so that doesn't make sense if it's
Yeah,
Beef
right.
Jergy. So
it's got a little bit. I'm going to call him Jurgens.
It's Jurgens. We'll go Jurgens, and he's got a little bit of a personality. He was joking around with some people.
Look, off the top of the head, and I don't know that much about the player. I'm going to allow you to elaborate on what you know. I know you said that they were interested in this player, but you hear about offensive linemen, you hear about Nebraska, and you turn on the tape and you watch. He's got that athletic feel. He's a little bit bigger, I think, than Jason Kelce, but he does have that. He moves similar to Kelce, where he gets up to that second level. What's your thoughts on the player? I know a lot of people said, "Oh, we don't need to address that position now." I personally thought it was a good pick. What did you think about the player, the pick, the overall move in general?
I think it's a logical move for this reason. I think a lot of people have started looking at life after Jason Kelce, and they say, well, Landon Dickerson can play center. He did it at a high level in Alabama. Isaac Seumalo, Jeff Stoutland himself has always said, Isaac is so smart that maybe long-term center is his best position. They've cross-trained Nate Herbig at center as well. You have so many bodies. Brett Toth has played at center. You have so many bodies that can play center. People are saying, why are you taking Cam Jurgens as a luxury pick? There's so many needs. You still need a corner. You still need a safety, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think people realize, they want to keep Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata together on that left side. Yeah. I mean, they were so
murderer's row over there. If I'm a defensive lineman, I want nothing to do with those guys.
Yeah. They were so dominant at the end of last season, and they're not moving, Landon.
And they're
Dickerson.
Still really early in their career, John.
Yeah.
Both of those players are nowhere near their ceiling, I would say.
And, that means Isaac is very versatile. And he's coming off the injury, but you don't want to waste, you don't want to get people, especially when you have to move from left guard to right guard. You don't want to mess with his mind and start saying, well, yeah, you might play right guard this year, but you might play center next year.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like
so they want to get more things situated, and they love the player. I mean, Stoutland loves the player. And he was banging the table for him since he, started watching film. The coaches sort of get into this process late as compared to the scouts and the personnel people, because they're worried about the NFL season. But once he got a look at him, and then it was interesting. They told the story, I'm sure you've heard by now, that when Cam came in to visit, Kelce came in the room, and they could have sort of made a quick friendship, and right away, and all of a sudden Jason Kelce started to get behind him, and almost picking his own successor. They just really, really like the player. And you're right, when you talk about offensive linemen and you hear Nebraska or Iowa or Wisconsin or Notre Dame, you're probably going to be okay. And, for some of the other guys, I do think, everyone who watches me should know by now how much respect I have for Jeff Stoutland, and I'm not the only one, but he's not a miracle worker. I mean, there is a difference between the Nate Herbigs in the world,
right, and having a
and
talented player.
yeah, and that's, if you start thinking about envisioning, Jordan Mailata, and Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens as a young player, and you still have Lane Johnson at the end of his career, and even Andre Dillard, who's still here, and he's remade his body. Everybody's now starting to see. I guess he posted on Instagram. The Eagles aren't just going to give him away.
I mean, I got to give it to him. I know that's just that. I look at that as like the combine thing. It's like you're throwing in shorts. It's not that big of a deal. But I mean, Dillard's problem was that he didn't have enough power to handle some of the
really struggled with the bull rush, especially with veteran guys. Like I remember was Everson Griffin in Minnesota and Robert Quinn in Dallas at the time, who just beat him like a drum because they're really, really smart pass rushers. But that's a lot of college offensive linemen. They need a year or two to get in an NFL weight room to get that strength. And they're strong for normal people, but not dealing with, NFL defensive linemen. So
real quick, do you see a move potentially with this offensive line? It's a crowded room. If you think your Jurgens might be able to play guard, he's not going to be a trade.
A couple things with Isaac. One, he's coming off the injury, which is a Liz Frank injury, and everybody's going to want to see if he's healthy to begin with. So I don't think his value is where it would be if he was healthy. And also, Stout has always loved him. Always. I mean, he's been one guy the Eagles fan base doesn't realize. They think he's just sort of the other guy. And Stoutland really, really likes him as a player. I could see them trading, Andre Dillard, but only for
a
third round pick or something of that nature, maybe even a conditional 3 that goes up to a 2. I could see him trading Nate Herbig now that you have Cam Jurgens, who just signed his restricted free agent tender, Suo, Petty, guys like that. But, you're talking about Matt Pryor. Like last year, they traded Matt Pryor for a 6th-round pick. You're not talking about, other than Andre, you're not talking about, great things coming back for backup offensive linemen.
Which is always interesting to me because I know you can't do this and this is not realistic, but if you put Andre Dillard, and he's still a young player, if you put Andre Dillard in the draft, he's a 2nd-round pick, I think, because you can get someone that can start and give you real minutes and be okay in the NFL. There's a lot of offensive lines in this league, John, like you talk about all the time. They don't have a competent left tackle.
Oh, no.
Dillard can be somewhat competent. How is he not worth a 2nd-rounder? I guess it's kind of just the whole
it's just
leverage.
It's a weird. Honestly, he's a 1st-round pick. He's a 1st-round.
That's what
he's
even more says all the time.
He's even more of a 1st-round pick than he was before.
Right.
Well, yeah, you can't get a 1st-round pick, but it's just the weird intricacies of the NFL. They value. There's not a lot of Les Sneads in the world. You say F them picks. They value these picks more than life itself, even though, and that's why I have, no issue with the Eagles trading for A.J. Brown. The odds of them getting an A.J. Brown type difference maker at 18 are not good. So I have no problem with it. Other teams value draft picks so much they wouldn't do that. But Andre Dillard, the way he looks now, the fact that he would be a 1st-round pick, that's the irony of it. And I'm not even sure the Eagles want to trade him for this reason. And people have looked at it, and I probably told you this before. They look at it and they say, well, as a backup, he's not as important because he can't play right tackle, which is true. He doesn't want to play right tackle. He's not good at playing right tackle. And typically backups need versatility. But that's where you have the luxury of Jordan Mailata can play either side and has no problem playing right tackle.
Do you think Dillard's in their long-term plans? Move Jordan to the right?
Well, you start
Lane
thinking
is
about
32, as good as
yes.
he is. Now, tackles do have a longer life in the NFL. You look at Whitworth. I mean, he was playing a 40. So maybe Lane has a lot left in him, but
maybe he does. But and that's, Lane's not only 32, but he's had reconstructive ankle
right.
surgery. He's had the anxiety issues. So maybe if the Eagles sees by it next year, he's healthy, he's both mind and body, so to speak, maybe at that point they feel a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, I could see them long term if things go wrong with Lane injury wise. Yeah, you just move Jordan to right tackle and put Andre at left tackle, and then that's not bad. And Raven Clark, by the way, is a good fourth tackle. But
and you
again,
said the Eagles like him.
Yeah. But he's not Andre Dillard. So, be careful what you wish for.
These are good problems to have, I think, if you're the Eagles. And you got so many players that are capable of playing on the offensive line, and you have a coach like Stoutland. I think that's a good problem to have. Let's shift. Third round. I thought it was the win of the draft. I know I've talked to you a couple times about Nakobe, and I've gotten the vibe that you don't look at this as a home run hit in terms of, in our undrafted free agent special, you said the Eagles got two difference makers, and that's what this draft is about, which I agree with. Jordan Davis, A.J. Brown. I throw the third one in there with Nakobe Dean. If this injury thing didn't pop up, and I will remind you, he played every game at the University of Georgia, he's a difference maker. If we didn't draft Jordan Davis, let's say, and the Eagles stayed at 18, traded away the other one and they ended up with Nakobe in the first round, I think the fans in Philadelphia are maybe just as happy today, barring all the rumors. I think this is a difference maker. I think it's a steal for the Eagles. I love the draft pick. What's your initial reaction, thoughts, analysis on Nakobe Dean at 83 overall?
There's a lot in there, Zander. I'll say this. I think it's an incredible value at where the Eagles got him. And I don't even care about the injury. I mean, that doesn't bother me at all because I explained
we talked about
on our previous, if he doesn't play 2 months this year, 3, even if you redshirt him, I don't really care that much. And if he comes back completely healthy in 2023, there are some concerns though. I didn't think he was a first round pick. So I'm not going to compare him to Jordan Davis. I do think, but what he does is splashier than what Jordan Davis does. But Nakobe Dean doesn't exist without Jordan Davis, which is what point. I was trying to explain. There's and people are never going to like the dirty work guys. They're going to like the missile going to the ball that they see and their eye is drawn to. But this is the NFL level. And as good as the SEC is, and it's obviously by far the best college conference, it's still not the NFL. He's a 5'11" kid, very undersized in an era where you're looking for these long, rangy linebackers and pass coverage. I think he's tremendously instinctive. But if you're talking about a first-round pick, am I going to use a first-round pick? Well, the Eagles are never going to use a first-round pick on a linebacker.
They wouldn't even use the second if we're being real. Yeah.
If I'm going to use a first-round pick, it's not going to be on a 2-down linebacker. You got to play all 3 downs. You got to be able to cover. So I'm not sure he's going to be that coverage type player in the NFL. But that's as a first-round pick. As a third-round pick, this is tremendous value. But yeah, I'm not going to put him in that difference maker category as I would a Jordan Davis.
John, with how small Nakobe is, I love the player, obviously. I watched him wreak havoc all over my Crimson Tide. I love the player. This is the NFL. It's not a forgiving league. These are big, athletic, physical dudes. Do you think Nakobe, it's possible, and I have no idea the answer to this question, is it possible he would not stay at linebacker for his whole career, maybe safety? Is that possible, or is that not even in the realm of possibility?
No, look at Kaiser White, who's that type, he was a safety at West Virginia moving a linebacker. It's more likely you're going to be a that way than
Right, the
linebacker
other way.
moving to safety. And this guy's a true linebacker. This guy's,
Yeah, that's what I mean. I know he's undersized.
I used to cover a guy by the name of Ed McDaniel. That's who he remembers. He reminds me of N'Kobe because Ed was 5'11". People aren't going to remember. He was a hell of a player, though. Really instinctive linebacker, just a natural flow to the ball, sideline to sideline. And that can be very, very impactful. And that was a different era. That was an era that was still, run heavy. Here's the problem. And you're going to get to see it in people who go to training camp. The Eagles have a 6'4", 6'5" tight end who can run like a deer. And the Dallas Goddards of the world and the Travis Kelce's of the world and the George Kittles of the world, they could just wall you off. If you're 5'11", yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult for him in pass coverage in the NFL. And then we don't even get to the running backs and how shifty they can be. So I don't know if he's a 3-down player, but you give me a good 2 down. This is the discussion we have with TJ Edwards all the time. Well, he's great against the run. Can he be a 3-down linebacker? Can he cover people consistently? And so N'Kobe to me is going to be in TJ Edwards' position, not Kaiser White's. In other words, he's going to be the run defender primarily, not the pass defender.
Yeah, and you talked about the multi-layered Jordan Davis. I think he helps those guys back there, not just N'Kobe, but all the other linebackers on the Eagles. He's going to make their life a lot easier when you have a force like that up on the front. All right, Johnny Mac, let's get over to they skipped the 4th round, I believe. No 4th-round pick. 5th-round pick? Or no, they traded the 5th-round pick. They went all the way to 188. Then they traded up to 181. They grabbed Kyron Johnson, linebacker out of Kansas, I believe. Any thoughts on him? I know people have said he's very quick, might be a special teams player.
I think that's, I think that's the role right away. The Eagles struggled on special teams last year in a lot of ways, returns, but also coverage. And, they lost Rudy Ford, who, people don't remember already, but I'll tell you what, he was one hell of a special teams player when he was healthy, one of the best in the NFL. Craig James was a great gunner, but, the Eagles felt they couldn't carry him on the roster. He's still here, so maybe he factors back into special teams as well. But, yeah, Kyron was a great special teams player in college at Kansas. He's runs a 4.4 at, linebacker size, so that's where he's going to be right away. It's interesting because most people graded him out as an off-ball linebacker, but the Eagles, from what Andy Weidel spoke, consider him as an edge rusher, sort of like Hassan Reddick, and same size, 6'1", 235, played edge rusher at Kansas in his last year, and that's what he's more natural at. So I think that's where they're going to.
Everyone's looking at that video of him at the Senior Bowl plowing that.
Yeah, Trevor Penning.
Yeah, first-round tackle.
Yeah, first-round pick, and that's where the Eagles and Andy said that's where we really didn't know about him that much until he showed up at the Senior Bowl, and he was really giving Trevor Penning fits. He was a first-round pick, I think, of the Saints. So, it's a 6th-round pick, and if he can play on special teams early and maybe he can develop, it is very undersized. But that's what Hassan Reddick is. And he's got 23.5 sacks. And over the last 2 years, and we actually talked to Kyron, he compared himself to Hassan Reddick, which is I will say, Hassan was the 13th overall pick.
Yeah, so that's lofty, Kyron.
Yeah. So I wouldn't expect that, but I think special teams is the most important part of the Kyron Johnson pick, and how he brought that up. And he said special teams captain, had 17 special teams tackles. That's where the Eagles, because they need help on those coverage units.
Yeah, and you can use the speed and athleticism on special teams while maybe allowing the players some time to get acclimated to life in the NFL and the speed of the NFL. But I do think, I mean, and we've talked about how this was a bigger pool overall of draft talent with the COVID and the different restrictions and the eligibility and stuff like that. I think he's a good player. I mean, he looked pretty good for I'm trying to think back to who our 6th-round pick was last year. Was it Teron Jackson or
Kobe Stevens?
Yeah. So I mean, I see him.
I think they had 2. Yeah, they had Teron was a 6th-rounder too, and then Patrick Johnson was a 7th-rounder.
There you go. So I look at this linebacker, and I saw. I mean, I don't know much about the guy, but I did see him blow up Trevor Penning at the Senior Bowl, which was a fun
everybody
highlight.
did. That's where the Eagles took notice of him.
Yeah. So and he looked super. He does pass the eye test for the athleticism thing, which is good. All right, Johnny Mac. Last pick of the draft at 198 overall. They took a tight end, Grant Calcaterra. He was an Oklahoma player, had some concussions, left football, came back, went to SMU. I think this is a good pick. I like the player. I remember when he played at Oklahoma, I thought he was a really good tight end. Did he play wide receiver there? Is that wrong? Did I get that from somewhere?
No, I don't think he played wide receiver. I mean, they could have put him out there at times.
Yeah,
he's more of a flex. He's more of a flex tight end.
But he is in the middle, right? He's not a true tight end, but he's definitely not a wide out. Right.
He's definitely he's a flex tight end, as they call it. Which is, they need a backup tight end, number one. I mean, Jack Stoll did a nice job after the Eagles traded Zach Ertz, but, there's some limited ceiling there. Not the best athlete in the world. More of an inline type guy, a wide blocker. Tyree Jackson they like, but he tore his ACL, obviously, in week 18. And he's a developmental project as it is, and now he doesn't have an off season to develop, so that's a concern. And then, JJ is trying to make the transition. You can't count on that. So they needed a tight end. And, Theme, another friend of Jalen Hurts, can't hurt. They knew each other from Oklahoma, and Jalen was texting him right away after he got picked. So I think he's going to be, have a chance to be that tight end too. Now, here's my one concern.
Which would be tremendous, by the way, for a late 6th-round pick.
Yeah. Well, I actually have 2 concerns. One, he retired because of concussion issues,
which is a major concern.
Now, he claims that he didn't have a lot of information. He just got a little bit scared after he had, I guess it was 3 in a somewhat, closed period of time. But then as he learned more about it, he realized there were different severities and his weren't very severe. So you still have to be concerned. So you have to put, an asterisk there and keep that in mind. But here's the second part. He is a flex tight end. He's not an inline tight end for the most part. Now he can, and you'll see him, but he's not a great blocker. And here's the thing about Dallas Goedert. Dallas is a really good blocker, and he's sort of in the George Kittle mode. He can do both, and there are very few tight ends that can do both these days. Problem is, Dallas is really good as a receiver.
And
I don't want to waste him as an inline tight end. So I almost would rather have Jack Stoll doing the dirty work and let Dallas Goedert be the flex tight end,
right?
Because he's so dangerous, than have Dallas be the inline tight end, the Y back, and have Grant Calcaterra as the flex tight end. So there's a little bit of a fit challenge there.
Yeah, could maybe Tyree Jackson play some of that dirty work role? I mean, you don't want
Tyree's a flex. That's the problem. Tyree's a complete play, even more of a flex tight end. So would JJ. I mean, you don't want an ex-quarterback blocking.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yes, that would be dumb. But Yeah, so I mean that's not bad though. If Calcaterra can come in and maybe play set snaps where he becomes a target for the quarterback. Look, we just talked about Dallas Goedert, so let me just give you my opinion on that. If he's able to clean up some of the and I don't look at it as a drop issue, I look at it as a concentration issue. If he can clean that up, I think he has the chance to be talked about with the greatest tight ends in this league. You talk about like what he can do in terms of blocking and how fast he is, and he's like a big dude in terms of being a physically imposing guy. You talked about Nakobe Dean would probably not have a great chance to be successful covering him. I mean, I think Dallas Goedert could be an imposing tight end in this league, but he's got to clean up some of those drops with the concentration. I mean, drive.
Yeah, a little stretch there when it's usually early in games when he's trying to.
The one that killed me was the freaking one off the foot, the intercept. I'm like, oh my goodness, oh god.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's perfect, but I will say, people in this league already talk. I mean, there's Kelsey, there's Kittle, there's Mark Andrews, and then there's Dallas Goedert. He's already there. He's already considered to be a top 5 tight end in this league. And, the numbers will come when the Eagles have a more high volume passing offense, which is, now that they have Dallas and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, it should be a more pass heavy offense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So do you anticipate Sirianni kind of, I don't want to say he's going to go back to what he did in week 1 through 7, but
he's going to go back to it. He's going to go back.
Maybe a combination of the two, maybe somewhere in between.
He's going to try, and if it doesn't work again, then he'll scale back. And then that will tell you all you need to know about Jalen Hurts. It's over for Jalen Hurts.
That's what I said about Tua in Miami when they got Tyreek Hill. Say what you want about Tua, but guess what? At the end of the year, maybe not even by the end of the year, they'll know. I think the same thing applies over here in Philadelphia. I'm rooting for Jalen. I hope he can take that next step as a passer. So, John, overall, I need the grade. I need what your overall grade
I don't like
is.
grades, but it's tough to criticize the Eagles when you get those two players at the top of the draft. So,
and I'm throwing in Nakobe Dean. I know you won't do it, but I'm throwing in Nakobe Dean. You got him in the 3rd round.
Well, and I think they only had 5 picks. I thought they all made sense. But yeah, I give him an A, but the A is mainly based on Jordan Davis and a guy who wasn't even a draft pick, and that's A.J. Brown.
Yeah, so and pretty good. And we talked about that. I think and real quick, the undrafted free agent I liked. We didn't talk too much about him, but the running back Kennedy Brooks. I think he could be a good player on this team. He might be able to fill that Jordan Howard role. I know a lot of people were.
Yeah, I don't know if he's big enough for that.
He's a little small, right? He's like 5'10" or so.
He's about 208, I think, too. So Jordan's.
Yeah, Jordan's a meaty dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were so many big backs in the draft. I think a lot of us thought that the Eagles would take one of those bigger backs on day 3. But remember, that was when they started. They started this thing with 10 picks.
Yeah.
And they used 6 picks to get Jordan Davis and A.J. Brown. But I have no problem with it. I'd rather have A.J. Brown than some, 225-pound 5th-round pick playing running back. I mean, just bring Jordan Howard back for another year. He's out there. He's always out there. He's waiting for the call. Just bring him back.
He absolutely is waiting for the call. And in conclusion, right before we started this segment, John, I saw a video on social media of the day A.J. Brown was drafted by the Tennessee Titans.
Right there.
Jalen Hurts standing there right there next to him. Congratulations, brother. I mean, that's what I always say. Like I always say, people always talk about, oh, they have a good relationship. Well, they're in the NFL. A lot of these guys talk. A lot of them might have. These guys are like actually friends. They're not like, hey, we're NFL buddies and we see each other at the Pro Bowl or whatever. These guys are like friends. Jalen's hanging out at his 2-year-old daughter's birthday party. He's at the draft party. I think there's some good chemistry going on in the Eagles locker room. If they can kind of mesh it together, I think there could be good things to come.
Yeah, there's one thing about Jalen Hurts, man. No matter who we ask, Jordan Davis, who's the first one that caught Jalen Hurts. You expect it with.
He is such a good leader, John.
You expect it with, A.J. Brown, obviously, as you mentioned, they have a close relationship. Grant Calcaterra, they knew each other before. But, I mean, this guy goes out of his way to make sure he gets somebody's number and welcomes him to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, I've said it really, you probably heard me say it too many times. It's so interesting because usually with young quarterbacks, all right, this guy's gifted. He can be a good player. But does he have the intangibles? Does he have the leadership? Can he lead a team? Can he get people to follow him? Jalen Hurts at a very young age is the exact opposite. Everybody loves the guy. Everybody wants to play for him when they get to know him, at least. But can he be a high level thrower in the NFL? We're going to find out because, again, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. That's good. That's good.
That's better than good. I would argue that might be the best cast in the NFC East. I mean, I know Dallas just lost a couple players. I don't look at Zeke as the same type of player he once was. I think that's like we said, and many have said, there's a lot less, if any, excuses at all left for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and that's what you want. You should be able to find out. We've been talking about this too long. We need an answer. You should get an answer, and pretty early in the season.
Yeah, I think you'll know pretty quick. Big Sales
I think
by week 6,
I don't think.
know.
Yeah, I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to show up week 1 and say, "Let's run the ball 45 times." He's going to say, "Let's use A.J. Brown."
And he's a former receiver himself, so as he should. All right, everyone, don't forget to like the show. Don't forget to share this show. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everyone. Our viewers, Johnny Mac, they've been all over the channel. They've been showing the support to JAKIB Media for the draft coverage. It's been wall to wall from Thursday night. So great stuff all around. Thanks to all of our listeners for helping us grow on YouTube. I appreciate it all. Johnny Mac, well done, sir. Great report. Great job this weekend being down there at the NovaCare, reporting on everything, learning about all the new players going to be in Eagle Green. Well done, sir.
Thanks, Zander.
All right, Johnny Mac. See you guys next time.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, IBEW98.org.